So I got a great question a while back, and by great I mean one that it was just very easy for me to relate to because I remember having the exact same situation. So you get into the law of attraction and you start recognizing that positive thoughts seem to manifest positive things in your life. But there's a counter to this. And what about negative thoughts? So if negative thoughts also manifest negative things in my life, then I have to be really careful about having them. And it sort of turns you into an OCD patient, obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's when you see the mind turned up very high, where anything negative is fought against and everything is about control. And of course, I would really suggest the lecture. You can just, it's really available online anywhere. Mind Over Mind by Alan Watts, where he deals with this exact same situation of mind trying to control mind, where it's like a ghost trying to open a door. The problem is the mind is just a thought, and so its ability to have any power over creating the universe or bringing things into reality is incredibly limited. Okay, but what about just a simple negative thought? Doesn't that have some impact? And there's so much research on this. It's true. If I sit and start focusing on gratitude, my whole quality of vibration changes, the nervous system changes, breathing changes, and it all goes in what we could call positive direction. If I focus on the negative and I focus on ruminating and victimhood and all the thing that's gone wrong in my life, everything changes. The vibration changes, the energy changes, stress happens, and that manifests it in all kinds of negative ways in terms of the body. So on that level, yes, stress can cause, can manifest in that sense. Then that gets us very stressed because then we stress about stress. So there's a really excellent video, I'll put it in the description, of how to make stress your friend. And it's really about this dilemma. Because if stress is bad for us, then we stress about stress, and then we stress about being stressed, and it goes on. And the problem is, it all goes back to the source. And when we talk about ego, and I'll get to the source in a second, but when we talk about ego, we're talking about a very superstitious entity. And that's what mind trying to control mind. It can't do it, so it comes up with all kinds of superstitions in order to create the illusion of control. And we do this all the time. We say, have a good day, as if it's some kind of blessed, like, by me saying that, I'm going to help you have a good day. Or we say, how you feel? We're always in a good mood. How you doing? I'm doing great. And if something possibly negative comes along, we have this weird ritual where, knock on wood. And I could be at a meeting, and it could be a very serious meeting, and I could say, knock on wood and knock on some wood, and no one will look at me like I've lost it. They'll look at me like a perfectly sane person, even though, frankly, that is a very strange ritual. If you can find anything on it, I'd be interested. What I found looks like it goes back to believing that the trees had spirits in them that could protect us. And so by knocking on wood, you're getting this kind of protection. But again, you can see that it still has its origins in an ego that is very fearful, paranoid, and trying to control, making the whole world good, and really making sure that nothing negative ever happens, like that negative thought. So where does all this go? And if there is a trick to it, what is it? Well, so much of this goes back to a very basic question, and I talk about this in almost every one of my videos. It goes back to just asking a very simple question. Do I trust the universe? Now, I don't mean your ego. The ego does not trust. The ego is paranoid. The ego is, like I say, it's an old program that was there when we lived in a very difficult environment, and it's about survival. It does not trust. It has no faith. So when I say, do you trust the universe? I'm not talking about your ego. I'm talking about what maybe people in Advaita, they might have a capital S. So like the self, something beyond the ego. Is there trust? And if there is, then there's a feeling that the things that we call negative are not really negative. And so when you get into the mode of the ego, it's the ego trying to protect itself from negative thoughts, But the trick is it's the ego that creates the dichotomy of good and evil in the first place. When we get beyond ego and embrace the self, we find faith, we find trust. And when you find trust, you realize that all the things in our life that we labeled as bad are not bad at all. They're only bad from that particular viewpoint. And so um, when I talk about the left brain and that interpretive function, so much of the trouble we create is over those interpretations and getting lost in them and actually buying that they're actually real. And that's true when it comes to negative thoughts. And so, are you sure it's a negative thought? You could take, so again, we get into this mode where we get afraid of having negative thoughts because we think they'll manifest as something negative. Are you sure that that's negative? How do you know? Remember in another video, I asked you to go through a journal and see how often your thoughts came true. And when you do this practice, you'll find that so many of the things that we thought were negative, one, they usually don't even turn out as we think they are going to, but also so many things in our life that we're so convinced at the time, oh, this is negative and I got fired or I lost this job or this relationship or I'm broke right now. So many of the things that we label as negative, they're actually not even negative when we view them through the context of the self, something beyond the ego. So that's the basic question. Take it back and ask yourself, is there trust? And that's a great way to get beyond ego because when you feel that paranoia, when you feel that sense of control, and when you feel that sense that you want things to be how they're not, you know that old program is running.